Hey everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. Today we're going to be talking about Amazon categories and keywords. This is a really important thing to learn and understand as an indie writer because for most indie writers, Amazon is going to account for the majority of your sales. We do have some other videos on publishing through the Amazon platform to kind of guide you through that process since it's something that applies to most indie writers. There are totally alternatives. We've got a video on deciding whether or not you want to distribute through Amazon, so I'll also leave that below for you to check out if you are publishing through the Amazon platform, which the majority of indie authors are. One really important step for your visibility on that platform is making the most of categories and keywords. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get into the video, I do want to draw your attention to the fact that Reedsy co-founder Ricardo Fayette has actually published his first book. It's called How to Market a Book, Overperform in a Crowded Market. There is a chapter that expands on what I'm going to say in this video. Ricardo really is like the it guy of indie marketing and advertising. So if this is the kind of information that you want to learn, these are topics that interest you, you want to know about advertising and marketing, the ebook version is and will always be free to download. If you want to check that out, I'll leave links in the description. Alright, so Amazon categories and keywords. We're gonna go through both, they are different, and we're gonna start with categories. So have you ever seen an indie book labeled as a bestseller and wondered what that means? No, it does not mean that it's on the New York Times bestseller list. It means they're an Amazon bestseller, which is actually something that pretty much any author can achieve if they play it smart. Now, of course, pretty much anyone can list their book under a very niche category and instantly become a bestseller because they're not competing with any other books. But the category might be so niche that there's not much readership there, which kind of defeats the point. You'll initially be able to list your book in 2 categories, but you're not actually limited to 2. You can then reach out to KDP support and get your book listed in up to 10 categories total. This is something that a lot of people don't know. They think you're just limited to the 2 categories because that's all they give you initially. But there's a pretty big difference in terms of visibility and possible reach there. So pick your 2 initial categories, but then immediately see if you can get them listed in others. Now, one kind of tricky thing here, and it's going to depend on the categories you're publishing in, is that the categories you select aren't exactly the same as the categories that show up in the Amazon store. So when you choose your categories, make sure that you then go find your book in the store and make sure it's listed under the category you want it to be listed under, because those things don't always equate. And then email KDP if you need any changes. Categories are part of your book's metadata. And so if you understand how people search for books, you can make it easier for them to stumble across yours. So ideally, you want to pick categories where within the first 15 days of launch, your book can land in the top 5. That's how you're going to end up getting a lot of visibility. But you should also pick a mix of low competition, medium competition, and high competition categories. Now, of course, there's some things you can't control. You can't control how many books are in your category or how many copies those books are selling. But there are some things you can control. So let's focus on that. So the first question you want to have for yourself is, how many copies of my book do I need to sell for it to land in the top 5 of this category or even make it to number 1? And then you want to ask yourself, which categories will realistically allow me to achieve this? It can be really tempting for a lot of indie authors to just pop their books into some really niche categories where there are barely any books listed and then be able to call themselves a bestseller, but no one is looking in those categories, and being a bestseller isn't worth much if it's not translating to any sales or visibility. It's a balancing act. You want categories where you can actually succeed and actually rank, so aren't too oversaturated, but also aren't so niche that no one is looking in them. Basically, you need to balance your competition and your potential for sales in the categories that you choose. All of that said, how do you actually analyze the numbers and figure out which categories you should list in and how many sales you'll need to succeed in them? So first you want to go to the category that makes the most sense for your book. Now, categories are nested inside of each other. So that's how you end up with really, really niche categories. So you're not just going to list your book in fantasy, you'd be listing it in fantasy, epic fantasy, medieval fantasy. They're nested in a kind of category tree. You want to go to the most specific branch of that tree. That's the category. Then when you've identified a category, of course one that's relevant to your book, you want to figure out how many sales you'll need to rank in the top 5 or maybe even the top 3 if that's your goal. Luckily, it's actually possible to figure out how many copies other books in your category are selling. So how to do this? First, you go to the product details, so you scroll down a little bit. These details will give you the book's Amazon bestseller rank. This is where the book ranks in terms of sales in all of Amazon. Then you plug that number into a Kindle bestseller calculator. You can use the one, for example, at kindlepreneur.com. You plug in that number and it will basically tell you how many sales the book is getting per day based on its rank. Do that for all the books in the top 3 or top 5, then average their sales and their sales ranking. This will give you the number of sales that you need to achieve that average sale ranking within that top 3 or top 5. So one tool you can use when you're using the ABSR method and calculating average daily sales is a tool called Publisher Rocket. It is a paid tool, but basically it does this category research automatically for categories and for keywords. Especially if you've published multiple books, this might be a worthwhile investment. So of course you'll find categories where it seems quite easy to get to the top. You know, you'll find categories where the best sellers in that category are only selling a handful of copies a day. Great, it would be really easy to rank there. But it also means that as the bestseller in that category, you're not going to be selling many copies per day because not many people are looking in that category. Of course, you know, you'll get that little bestseller sticker, but you'll still only be getting a handful of sales. So find a category where you realistically can get to the top, but where getting to the top will also translate to more sales. All right, so now let's talk about keywords. A lot of the keyword stuff takes similar principles actually. So you can pick up to 7. Basically, this is what Amazon uses to determine whether your book shows up in reader searches. So if a reader is searching for a book, maybe they don't know the title or they don't even know which specific book they want. Let's say they're looking for a book on gardening. They would search, you know, gardening manual. If you've written a book that is a gardening manual, Amazon would pick that up based on your book's keywords and display it in the search. Ideally is what would happen. But you can actually use keywords to rank in more categories. This is a little tricky, but it's called categories with keyword requirements. What this means is that certain keywords will automatically get your book listed in certain categories or segments of categories on the store. And these are categories that might not be available otherwise. The way to find out what these magic keywords are is literally to just Google your genre plus Amazon categories with keyword requirements. Then search for the category you want to be listed in and you'll see the keyword you need to use. However, just know that these pages aren't always updated, so you might find a category you want to list in, but the keyword requirements aren't disclosed on the page. So in that case, you just have to guess, and generally it's fairly obvious. But there are also other things to consider when picking your keywords. This is fairly intuitive, but obviously you want to use keywords that will match search phrases readers would use to find your book on Amazon. Again, if you're trying to sell your gardening manual, but you used keywords that were about baking or about mechanical engineering, no one is going to search those things when looking for a garden manual. That's fairly obvious, right? Your keywords should relate to your book. You don't want to use keywords that you think will have a high search volume if they're not related to your book, because no one searching those keywords is looking for a gardening manual at that moment. If they're looking for a gardening manual, they're going to search gardening manual. So one great way to do this is to go to Amazon's search engine and start typing in keywords that you think relate to your book and see what shows up in autocomplete. This will give you ideas as to more niche or more specific keywords that people use or often pair to each other. So Amazon will basically generate popular keywords for you based on the most popular searches related to your search term. So if these were relevant to your book on gardening, you could use those as your keywords. Now for keywords, you also want to use longer phrases because Amazon will actually index your book for any combination of words within that keyword. So this is a way to get kind of more out of those 7 keywords. So for example, if you're writing a historical romance novel, so if you use the keyword 19th century Victorian small town clean romance, you'll actually get indexed for 19th century romance, Victorian clean romance, etc., etc. What you don't want to do is use keywords that are already in your title or subtitle. Don't just rewrite the title as a keyword because that's already indexed into your book's metadata. So you're kind of just wasting a keyword by basically repeating one you already have. Now, if you really want to rank for one specific keyword, say you have one keyword that's like your highest priority keyword, it's your best search term, you really want to make sure you rank for it, then you should put it on its own so that Amazon registers it as an exact match. Now here you want to do actually the same thing that you did for your categories. Search your keywords, look at the top 3 or top 5 books under that keyword and do literally the exact same thing you would do with categories to see if the keyword is worth listing under. Again, you just want to see how competitive it is and what your chances are to rank under that keyword. So it's the exact same thing. You want to figure out how many sales you need to rank for that keyword, and then at the same time, if you were ranking for that keyword, how many sales will it translate to? You can change and adjust your keywords and categories. There's definitely some trial and error involved here. You can go through this whole process perfectly and still find that maybe you end up not ranking. It's okay if you need to go back and adjust a category or just a keyword until you find the combination that really works for you. In fact, if you find that after you go through all your categories and keywords and publish your book, you're not ranking, you're not getting sales, then you actually probably want to go back, look at your categories and keywords, see what you can change, start making little adjustments until you start ranking. So that is all on categories and keywords. I'll leave lots of resources in the description along with the ones I've already mentioned. This is one of those little technical things. It might not be everyone's favorite part of the writing and publishing process, but it is an important one for having success on the Amazon platform. Pretty much everyone is going to be listed there, so you might as well make the most of it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing tips every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time, bye.